keeping with the Joey Panto Show tradition of unearthing relevant historical figures, Murray Rothbard has been clonked. That means a wonk cloned. Okay, Murray, the Fed has again become the cause of the very thing it was designed on Jekyll Island in 1910 to prevent: a massive speculative bubble that threatens the financial system with cascading bank failures. The central banks in history have done nothing, according to the Austrian school, I think you will agree, but aggravate recessions and depressions. And could you go over the history of these crises and give a little background? Now, the news background to this, of course, is that in the Wall Street Journal, somebody close to the administration's floating the idea of a 40% stake in Citigroup. And another article that came out today, the 24th, is a Reuters article saying that Bernanke is looking at being able to convert the government's preferred stock that they've purchased in several banks and allowing them to convert it to common stock, which is effectively nationalization and effectively socialism. Unprecedented move, as far as I can tell, in the U.S. Can you back me up on that assertion? Yeah, okay. Let's go back. Let's go back to founding of the Republic, 1791. Hamilton, seeing all the currencies that were proliferating around, during the war and in the war's aftermath, several banks were printing their own money, and it was creating some amount of chaos. But as the new Constitution took effect, Washington took power. Hamilton proposed in 1791 the first bank of the United States. Had a certain charter, was supposed to be forbidden from buying government bonds, mandatory rotation of directors, could not incur debts beyond its actual capitalization, no foreign vote, Secretary of Treasury has free access to records, funded by the whiskey tax. That proved to be a problem. So Washington, looked at wanted to get some opinions. So Jefferson and Madison, a little more studied on the subject, opposed the first bank of the United States, and on the grounds that they just first didn't like the idea of a monopoly on currency and financial matters, picking winners and losers, that kind of thing. Too much influence from government, and of course the whiskey tax to the Southerner was a very repugnant idea. Hamilton argues back that the bank was constitutional by asserting the government's right to create a corporation if that corporation was functioning as a manager of, quote, objects entrusted to the management of government, namely the currency in circulation. So he's basically saying we need it because we need to manage the currency, which of course assumes a fiat currency, and Hamilton certainly wanted a fiat currency so that he could finance things like wars or whatever he wanted by just printing money or raising it with the full diplomatic backing of the government. So Washington initially says, I don't know, it doesn't sound very good, but then eventually signs it. So I don't know, they were able to flip him at some point. Jefferson continued to rail against the central bank idea, I think, till the day he died. So what happened then? The first bank ruled with some kind of limitation. There was no real financial crisis to speak of during the whole reign of the First National Bank, which was a 20-year reign set to expire in 1811. But when 1811 came around, Madison was president. Madison ironically had been one of the ones to argue against the first bank. In fact, supported the second bank and helped to found it. Because again, currency proliferation from several banks was becoming a problem. That was supposed to be the thing that the bank would manage, was the amount of currency, and form a monopoly on the printing and the making of money through the U.S. Mint. But banks were issuing notes, promissory notes to each other, which were being traded effectively like currency. So, again, Madison sees this as and during the War of 1812, which occurred on Madison's watch, inflation rose mightily, and there was blame. The blame was initially fixed on the private banks. So because there was no central bank between 1811 and 1816, it was blamed on the private banks. Because again, there's unbacked currency. They were issuing unbacked currency. So now, just to correct it, unbacked currencies led to the creation of the first Bank of the United States in 1791. Same kind of thing caused the creation of the second Bank of the United States in 1816. Now, the thing that really caused it was not the fact that private banks trying to make money alone. It was, in fact, the printing of unbacked currency. And Andrew Jackson, fast forward to 1832, when Jackson's elected in 1828, becomes a fierce opponent of the central bank, and the second bank blamed the central bank for inflationary pressures that occur after 1816. Sees lots of conflicts of interest, lots of rich people getting richer, and in general the tendency of the central bank to cause inflation. Makes a case against the bank. This is in the 1830s. Now let's go back. Now for some perspective. Now what ends up happening is Jackson kills the bank. But to get the perspective on that, let's go back to the Panic of 1819. Something I wrote a paper on in my dissertation. Panic of 1819 was caused by unstaked money expansion, as I mentioned. Now, the second Bank of the United States was a direct contributor of this money expansion. Now, in dealing with it, there was relatively little intervention, regulation, or stimulus, no nationalization. The economy ends up recovering on its own by 1823. Traction was basically the overruling of the second bank and cutting off of its powers to some extent to force a monetary contraction. Don't we wish we could do that now? The result was the government, including the president and the Congress, were able to push back the power of the bank, push down the power of the bank in order to enable a recovery. They more or less understood the principle.